Welcome to the next in the Transforming Assessment webinar series. This session is on game-based learning and assessment. The presenter today is Professor Sara Freitas from the Coventry University in the UK. I'll now hand you over to Professor Jeffrey Crisp, who will introduce Sara.
Sara Freitas, who's Professor of Virtual Environments and Director of Research for the Serious Games Institute. That's her main role, is Director of Research at the Serious Games Institute of Coventry in the UK. And we want to particularly thank Sara for being with us today, because she's actually not in Coventry at the moment. She's actually in Italy, and she's agreed to obviously to continue with the webinar here from Italy, which is great. Her connection's a little bit slower than what she would have back in Coventry, but so far it's been so good on that line. So Sara, thank you very much for that. I won't go through a long introduction here. We've given a bit of introduction to your background on the Transforming Assessment website. I think the main thing that people need to know is that you're an expert in the area of games. You've done a considerable amount of work here on serious games, and you're going to be talking to us about game-based learning and assessment. So Sara, I'll hand over to you, and Matthew, if you'd like to start the archiving.
Hello, everyone, and as Jeffrey
archiving
was saying,
started.
I'm based in Genoa in Italy at the moment. I have quite a slow download time and upload time. In fact, it's taken probably about an hour to upload my video, so I haven't been able to upload all the videos I would like to show. So apologies for that to the group that are here today. As Jeffrey was saying, I'm based at the University of Coventry, part of the Serious Games Institute, which we set up about 3 years ago. We're part of the commercial arm of the University of Coventry, so that's Coventry University Enterprises, which is the largest commercial arm of any university in the UK. So we work very closely with industry in the work that we do. We're quite focused on how to get innovative technologies and research out into industry, so that's a fairly major aspect of what we do. So my phone's just buzzing there. Okay, so I'm going to talk today about game-based learning and assessment, and I want to talk about a vision for how learning in the future will take place and how assessment will become part of that more immersive and interactive set of learning environments. So what I'm going to be doing is, sorry, I'm just trying to, I have to signal to my colleague Matthew to change my slide. So I'll try and do that just through text rather than through speaking. So I'm going to talk today about the trends and developments within the area of serious games. So in terms of people in the audience, how many people don't know what serious games are? Just put your hand up if you don't know what serious games are. My problem is I've got an 8-second delay on the upload time, so it's going to take me a while before I can actually see people's ticks. So I can only see one tick, so that means that probably most people know what serious games are, but just for the benefit of Paul Harris. So serious games are games that are developed for educational or non-entertainment purposes. So they might be learning games, for example, in this context, or games for business support, or games for training. So I would have liked to show you some clips today, but unfortunately, because of the upload time, I haven't been able to upload them. But you can go to our website and see some of the clips there, and that's www.seriousgames.org.uk. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the trends and developments within the serious games area. I'm going to give you a very, very brief introduction to the Serious Games Institute. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the strands of research that we're looking at. And then I'm going to try and kind of give us some sort of focus to this immersive learning experiences concept, which we've been exploring over the last few years, and try and see how we can create these touch points between immersive learning environments and learning and e-assessment itself. Because what we're proposing is that the way that we're going to learn in the future does constitute a paradigm shift from traditional learning, in the sense that it will be much more about immersive environments and how we design those and work within those. So then I'm just going to give a little bit of a vision for how that kind of might look in the future, some work that we've been doing around the development of that, and then just finish at the end with some ideas around, reflecting really upon how those kinds of experiences are actually changing how we work, how we learn, and how we assess. And just reflecting again upon whether we actually do see this as a paradigm shift in terms of learning. So I'll be very interested to see what people think about that vision, and whether that is controversial or whether now people have kind of pretty much accepted it. In the last presentation I gave around this concept, people did seem to be, accepting the fact that this paradigm shift was occurring. So then just quickly to start talking very, very briefly about the trends and developments. I'm sure that Matthew has probably changed the slide. It takes a while for me to see it. So just to give you a kind of flavour for how big that industry is, in the month of January, that's 2010, total sales of games was 1.17 billion. That was just for 1 month. So that kind of gives you some idea of the scale. Within that, the value of serious games in 2008 was between 1 to 2 billion. That is not a very academic kind of figure, and it's very, very ballpark. And we've seen figures up to 9 to 11 billion for that year. But it really depends whether you take military and whether you include e-learning within that. So these figures are, we have to be a bit critical of these figures. But I mean, just to kind of give you a rough idea of what's going on. In terms of the gaming kind of culture, in a recent survey in the UK undertaken by the BBC, again, not an academic survey, but an interesting survey in terms of the results, found 100% of 6 to 10-year-olds in the UK actually consider themselves to be gamers. So we're looking at a fairly major shift there, and 59% of the general UK population are actually playing games on a regular basis. That demographic is quite interesting, and it has changed obviously over the years, but we've seen some quite radical shifts in gameplay, and I think it's fair to say that we're seeing very large numbers of people playing games. In terms of the people listening today, how many people in the audience play games on a regular basis? I'll put my hand up virtually because it'll just take too long. So you can see some of the ticks coming up. I've got 4 at the moment. 5. So there's quite a, I suppose as a proportion, that's probably something like half of the audience. So maybe we're just a little bit under that demographic figure, but probably a representative group. So thank you for that. Actually, quite interestingly, quite a few studies are actually showing how effective games actually can be, particularly in terms of behavioural change. And there's 2 projects that have been, or 3 studies that have been quite large that have shown that. One I'll talk about a little bit later, which is Serious Games Engaging Training Solutions project. One's the Hope Labs Remission evaluation undertaken by Dr. Pam Cato, and then there's a PULSE project in the US as well. In terms of other trends, where I think we're all aware of the kind of the wide uptake of social software, how many people have a Facebook account? How many people? Yeah, tick if you have one. I'm sure this is going to be everyone. No, not quite everyone, but most people. Obviously, my hand goes up here as well virtually. I think that the pervasiveness of social software is quite significant, and a recent study found that Wikipedia was the 2nd most used research tool among students in the university in the UK. So I think that pervasiveness is incredible, considering that social software tools have only really been around comparatively recently. And I think it shows the power of social interaction and also the power potentially for social learning, and that's something it's a theme that comes through. The other last trend, I think, is how people are beginning to learn in much more multimodal ways. And we're seeing this through the use of mixed reality games, through augmented reality, mobile learning. There's just much more flexibility in terms of how we can actually learn multimodally. That's in terms of different senses.